And let's see if we can go live. It says we're live. I don't know. We'll find out in a minute. Hello, everybody. See a few of you out there in the chat already. Yeah, Stephen, you guys are all the chosen ones. Hello, Brenda. Steve 64, Clive. Hello, Clive. You got Carl K sitting in the Discord here. Let's see if I've got. Let's put the live stream up. This is very impromptu. Earth is life. Hey, what's going on, big ball? Steve 64, monochromatic light source. Peter Harrington. Oh, yes. Lots of people coming. There we go. Hey, Larry. Hello, Larry. Hello, Carl K. Had the mic turned off, so.
Hey, man. Hi, Blue.
Hello, hello. Wait a second. I may have. Let me try something. I think I've got to reset my. I think I got to reset something in Discord here. Yeah, let's see. I think I need it set that way. Talk to me again, Larry.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go. Now let's see if that's going out to. Let's see if we're sending that to YouTube. Say something else.
Hello.
Oh yeah.
1,
Good.
2, 3.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got rid of that crazy banana audio panel thing. So I'm relearning how to do all this stuff without any of that other thing hooked in. Hey, PhD Tony.
Hello, Blue. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm well enough, thank you.
Yeah.
You have a very intriguing title up.
Yeah, that's a teaser, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, our friends over on the Try Thinking channel seem to continue to have problems with certain concepts.
Yes.
And they've managed to irritate me a little bit.
Yes, it's the well that they're just they're philosophically and mathematically illiterate.
Yeah.
Is one of the main problems. So and this allows them to sort of perform various verbal contortions that actually don't make any logical sense whatsoever. I noticed that Sudiko in the chat is aware of the existence of tau, which sort of surprised me. I read an article once that said pi is the wrong number, and I thought, what the hell is that about? And they went through a fairly convincing argument, to my perspective, that pi isn't actually the number we're interested in. It's 2 pi that we should have a simple symbol for.
Yeah.
And I was quite I was It's quite an interesting concept. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to change the inertia that modern mathematics happens, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a pretty strong argument for having a rotation be defined by a rational number. I mean, just in all my instruments, I have instruments that read in all kinds of different units. I mean, but they're all rational, like 6400 or 6300 or 360. It just
Yeah.
it makes good nomenclature. I know it's not it doesn't really change anything. So you should measure in radians. No, I calculate in radians. I measure with and it was just I'm in favor of tau. All you got to do is just that's why I use mils, which is 6400, which is roughly a milliradian, but it's rational.
Yeah, it's just something interesting. And I mean, for all that I say that real people use radians, measure angles using radians, I mean people who don't have to take measurements. Obviously, if you're measuring angles, it's much easier to use. It's much easier to use degrees or something that's
A rational number.
Yeah.
A rational number for the tooling. Right. The calculation still occurs in radians. That's completely normal.
Yeah, let me do a quick shout out to JSS Tiger for $5. It says, I guess circumference divided by diameter doesn't exist.
Which is contradicted by the Bible.
Yeah. But that's an excellent lead-in because I'm not sure that my graphic adequately displayed what I was trying to say. Notice there's a prime after pi in that title. And what that's alluding to, and I think everybody can see it up on the YouTube screen, and you guys can probably see it if you go to my live thing here in Discord. What that's alluding to is what happens when you draw a circle on the surface of a sphere in non-Euclidean geometry. That pi, which we could call spherical pi or pi prime, whatever you want to call it, that's no longer constant. It's not constant because the bigger you make the circle, the radius of the circle is not changing the same way it does in planar geometry.
Yes.
So you're left with the obvious fact that pi prime, could vary anywhere from 2.0 if the circle is the size of the sphere itself, a value of 2, down to if you have an infinitely small little circle drawn on the surface of the sphere, then it's the same pi we're all normally familiar with, 3.14159.
So to be perfectly clear here, what we're talking, to make sure I'm understanding, what you're talking about is the ratio between the circumference of that circle and the great circle radius.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Exactly. So it was a comment that I made in Terry Davies' channel, I don't know, a week or so ago. And Bev came in and went crazy when I said it, and has done nothing but misrepresent me since then, and I'm a little tired of it. I never said pi changes. I said spherical pi or pi prime, whatever you want to call it. Give it a name, but that's the thing that changes, not pi.
Yeah, that's a well, this is the thing that I have a white hot hatred for Bev, who I think is a very malicious character, and yeah, as not just stupid, overwhelmingly dishonest.
I can think of only one application of that pi prime, and that is to make the AE map.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a but it's a fairly simple concept, and one that has an application on the surface of a sphere, which has happened, or a spheroid, which we happen to live on. So it's typical flirt misrepresentation and cherry picking. They just
Well, if they don't understand it, it's wrong. It's a lie.
Well, if they don't understand it, it must be stupid. And the reality is that they're always working from the axiom that they have correctly understood what has just been said, and almost always that axiom is false.
Yeah.
They have not understood what was said.
Ooh, hello, Ruhif.
Hello. Check out the DM I just sent you about Bev and radians.
I'll do that. You guys go ahead and chat.
Yeah.
Let me take a look.
Post it on the live stream.
Yeah, so it's I mean, I don't know how you put up with being in close contact with Bev, because he just seems incredibly malicious, incredibly dishonest, just thoroughly contemptible individual.
Oh my God. I'm going to see if I can move. I want to play what I said too before we get too far into this, but let me see if I can move this over. I'll go large.
Level Earth Observer is a joke, Steve 6464. But he's kind of turned himself into an irrelevance. He's got these things that he just refuses to engage with unless you meet his claims, and that just makes him completely irrelevant. Okay, we can't educate you.
I'll let him. Sorry.
No, carry on.
Yeah, I'll let you do the honors, Ruhif. Explain this.
Oh yeah, so Bev and I were talking about auto levels and how the stadium arcs are always 10 milliradians apart, and he sort of sounded like he'd never heard of radians before, and then I kind of dug a bit further and asked him, what is a radian, and he just sounded thoroughly confused. So I just asked him straight up, does a radian depend on the size of the circle? And his answer, it depends on the size of the radius, or you should just use degrees.
This is
yeah.
That pesky little SI unit definition.
Yeah. But it was an obvious cover-up because he had no idea what it was, and had just quickly Googled it and, didn't understand exactly what it was and how it doesn't matter of the radius. So, yeah. Anyway, that's all I had. So
that's outstanding.
Every now and again, there's a moment, there's an exchange that really distills for you in that moment exactly how little these people know.
Yeah.
And Ruhif, I think you just crystallized exactly the cavernous ignorance that we're dealing with here, that is very confident in how much it knows.
Okay, guys, about if I go out on a tangent, so I'm working with a girl called P now. We call her 3.14.
Yeah, okay.
That's a tangent, though.
Well, it's always good to go off on tangents when you're talking about pi.
Yeah,
it's very theme.
Yeah. Might be better not to.
Anyway, you were going to play us what you actually said.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I don't know if you guys are going to hear this. You may have to listen to it through YouTube. This thing that's up on the screen, by the way, anybody that wants to go look this up, just Google spherical pie and stick the word University of Illinois in there, and you'll find this. It's a little article written by, University of Illinois Department of Physics. And the title of it is Pi is Not as Constant as You Think. You could Google that too and you'll find it. So let me minimize that. I think I maximized it instead of minimizing it. There we go. I'm going to start this thing playing and you guys tell. If you can't hear it, you'll have to go over to YouTube and just put it with a delay. I'm not going to make a production out of this to try to reroute the audio, but we'll see what happens here. You ever heard of spherical pie, Bill?
It's different, right?
The value of pi on the surface of a sphere. If you draw a circle on the surface of a sphere, pi is not a constant anymore.
But pi is a constant.
Not spherical pi.
Well, I'd just like to point out again, in reality, pi is a constant.
In reality, spherical pi is not a constant.
Yeah.
Yeah. In reality, it is not. It varies between 2 and 3.14159, the one you know about.
But
the only
pi cannot vary. That's the
Certainly
point.
Can on the surface of a sphere, buddy. It can. It does.
But pi doesn't vary, Blue.
Yes, it does. If it's
a really,
pi, Bev,
it's a really bad argument.
Your lack of education is not my problem. It's your problem. Go learn something.
Pi has a value. That's called pi. It doesn't change.
That is pi in planar geometry, Bev. When you
but
draw
it doesn't change. Pi's only pi.
Yes, it does. When you draw a circle on the surface of a sphere, you've got a pi number that is variable. It depends. It depends on how big the circle is. If the circle
isn't variable,
if the circle happens to be the diameter of the sphere, pi has a value of 2.000. If the circle is infinitely small on the surface of a sphere, it has a value of 3.14159. It varies by the sine of the fucking angle. And with that, I think you guys heard enough of me getting a bit upset with Bev. But I don't think I was unclear about that, and I'm a little tired of Bev misrepresenting it. Let's see if I got back on Discord or
not. No, you were very clear. And to be honest, I'd never heard of spherical pi before today. But as soon as you explained it, it's the ratio between the circumference and the great circle radius. That of course is going to vary with that spherical radius, or the angular representation of that spherical radius. That's fine. Makes perfect sense. And I can see that there would be mathematical applications where that value, that ratio, is actually going to be useful. So it's you were perfectly clear. Bev just likes to get something that is true. The fact pi is a constant. Yes. The ratio. If you're going in this conversation, you need to be specific. The ratio between a planar circle and its radius is constant.
Yeah.
But the ratio between the circumference of a circle on a sphere and the great circle radius is not constant. And all he wants to do is pull terminological or semantic tricks to try and confuse the conversation.
And he's good at that. I mean, when you think about it, I suppose Ruhif can join in this discussion because he knows more about celestial navigation than I do. But that's essentially what you're getting into with that. Our distance to a circle of position or line of position, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah, that's just a linear relationship, like the relationship between the angle at the center of a circle and the arc length.
Yeah.
So it's simply a linear, 60 nautical miles per degree. So not at all complex. But people don't seem to understand that means a circle, and doesn't work on a flat plane.
Yeah, and that radius is being measured across a curved surface.
Yes. So
so if you take the planar dimension of the circle, you're going to come up with
pretty
a different
pathetic
number. Yeah.
It's pretty pathetic that we, if we use the word radius to describe the distance from the GP, the circle, right? They go, oh, radiuses have to be straight. And I'm like, okay, let's just call it the set of all points that are equidistant from the center, right? It's just the word games, particularly with Bev, are pathetic. But like Oakley and those guys also play word games. It's just, Flat Earth used to be about examining observations and applying the curve calculator, and now it's just devolved into bullshit word games.
Well, and that's telling, I think, because a lot of them have basically completely isolated themselves from the world of observational science. Bev's conversations are all about Euclidean geometry and level is horizontal. Nothing else matters. Gary Y. Benger is all about what he calls the geometry of vision. They're all talking about these weird abstract concepts, but none of them will engage with the observations.
Yeah, that's unfortunate too. It always works out that way with those guys. They ignore their own observations, just like Bev in that beautiful picture he made of Blackpool. I can't think of a more explicit photographic example of how level deviates from horizontal. He's got his own auto level set up out there, shooting presumably a line perpendicular to vertical at the point of the instrument is set, striking 100 feet up on the side of that building at Blackpool.
Yes.
And he will make no effort to try to explain that. Every time he will revert back directly to, but I wasn't making a picture of Blackpool. Well, I don't care what you were making a picture of, buddy. It's in there. It's sitting right there. Right in front of your face.
It's like taking a selfie and you just happen to capture a mugger or something in the background. Well, I wasn't taking a picture of a mugger.
Yeah, you still got the picture, didn't you?
It's still evidence in a court of law.
You bet it would be. So how's everything else going, guys? Are we having fun this evening?
Oh, reasonably. Obviously, you guys have been on tenterhooks, watching the cricket like I have, and Australia ended up winning. So that's a good lead into the new year.
Is this for the Ashes?
No, this wasn't for the Ashes. This was Australia versus South Africa. But yeah, obviously I'm being ironic. But for us, it's a big deal. Just after Christmas, the Boxing Day test starts, and we all sit around watching it. Some of us eating leftovers. But it's always good to beat South Africa.
Yeah, it's not a. I don't even know where I'd go to find it on television over here. I'm sure it's there somewhere. stuck in one of those obscure
cricket-
channels I never watched.
Cricket is like baseball on played by sloths. It's like if you think baseball's boring, cricket lasts a freaking week.
Well, that's the test matches, but even then, it's more exciting than baseball.
Oh, right. I mean, you break for tea, you break for dinner, they stop, and then they start up the next day where they left off, and break for tea and break for dinner.
Yes, that's right, and it's still more exciting than baseball. You know what makes it more exciting? People can score.
You go back the next day, and they're still playing. That's why they don't have cricket in the Olympics, because the Olympics are only 2 weeks long, and you can only play like 2 games.
Well, it's not entirely true. Actually, cricket has been in the Olympics, and I think actually France might be the reigning Olympic champions. But you're talking about Test cricket. You can have 20 over cricket, which takes less than a baseball game to finish, so you can be finished inside 3 hours, and that's very popular nowadays. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff. Anyway, I did not actually mean to derail the entire conversation.
Believe it or not, I actually have a cricket match here and a cricket rules book here. And for an American, I've watched the sport span a fair amount of time. I did look up cricket. It was in the 1900 Olympics.
Yep.
And who won? England won.
Oh, okay. No, I think it was England versus France.
That's right.
I think it was. Do you know which countries played the first international?
No idea.
Cricket game. That would be the USA and Canada in 1844. Up until World War I, cricket was the most popular bat and ball sport in the US.
Well, you can always tell where the English have been because they play cricket. You can tell where the Americans have been because they play baseball. So Japan plays baseball, the Caribbean plays baseball, India plays cricket. Some of the
Caribbean play cricket. I think you'll find.
Well, the Dominican Republic plays baseball. Cuba plays baseball. Where the Americans
the West Indies,
plays
Jamaica,
cricket.
Barbados,
plays cricket. Yeah. Okay. So where the British have been, they play cricket. Where the Americans have been, they play baseball.
Yes. Anyway, that was far too much talk about cricket.
Yeah, I saw Gary Wybeing out in the chat. What stupid thing did he say? Something about Randy's Blackpool picture.
He'll be going on about the geometry of vision, etc., etc. This thing, we can tell from multiple sources of evidence that what the shape of the Earth is without looking at optics. We can follow the trajectory of the sun using neutrino detectors. We can, we've got the way seismic waves travel. We've got, reciprocal azimuthal angles. We've got, satellite laser ranging, very long baseline interferometry, GPS. We've got photographic evidence from space. Gary will ignore all of that and just concentrate on why things disappear bottom up as they go over the horizon.
Has any flurf ever tried to explain the neutrinos from the sun coming through the Earth?
I have heard them. It seemed like meaningless word salad.
Okay, sort of like explaining. I mean, the only way to explain the seismic waves is to say "nuh-uh" to the globe.
Yeah. They never have an answer for it, and it kills them. Like any one of these kills them, but we've just got more and more and more evidence. And Gary will just
Didn't you know that light behaves like rubber bands?
I did know that. Gary told me.
Gary told you. Yeah, that's really good.
But Bev goes back, says, go back to first principles. Okay, first principles. South Pole exists. We're done.
I've given up on Bev. I don't even listen to him anymore.
Well, first principles. Yeah, you determine shape and then you measure it. Well, the shape is obvious because
Blue.
South Pole exists and the southern star trails, eclipses, tides. Yeah, 500-600 years ago, they weren't talking about the shape of the Earth. They were talking about whether or not it rotated 500 years ago. And tides kind of put that one to bed. Not to mention observation by Brahe.
Oh, Blue just put a couple nails in the coffin of Bev here a couple days ago.
Man, it's hard to keep him in there though.
I know. He keeps popping out. Like
Slithers out through a crack somewhere, and here we go again.
You need to drive a stake through his heart, Blue. You just can't nail the coffin shut. You gotta drive a stake through his heart.
Nobody ever relied on the ocean horizon to mean anything, unless you're using a marine sextant, and that's only because you have to. That's your plan B. Marine sextant and marine environment. If you had a marine sextant on ground, you still wouldn't use the ocean horizon even if you could see it.
Well, the funny thing is, the ancient Greeks saw the boats disappearing from the bottom to the top and coming, top to the bottom, and they figured out that the Earth was not flat.
That's like a superior piece of military intelligence. When you get a spyglass and see the top of a mast, you're onto something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's why they put the look.
Probably more than that. It's probably a lot to do also with guys being on those boats, watching large mountains disappear.
Yes.
And that's why they put the lookouts in the tops of the masts. I mean, they didn't put them at the bottom of the ship. They didn't, put them below the deck. They put them up at the top of the mast for that very reason.
Yeah, not even the bridge. Yeah, not even the bridge. They went to the crow's nest.
It's why they made lighthouses tall.
Yeah. Put them up on top of things.
Right, but not too tall because, except in very few locations, if they're too tall, then you get the fog that comes.
Yeah.
But you're right.
But it's there is. You basically need to wrap yourself in a web of self-delusion. You require magical thinking, and you can see it in Gary. Gary thinks that he has this explanation. It's been explained to him that it isn't an explanation. It doesn't work. The Boakes in the chat is just pointing out that the direction that the sun rises in, as viewed from Melbourne, south of east, is a fairly solid indicator. But it's sorry, I just got derailed off my thought. But yeah, Gary's got this one thing he thinks he can explain. He can't. His explanation is completely wrong. But he imagines that therefore all of the rest of the globe evidence must be able to be explained away. And it is completely magical thinking. He misinterprets this one data point. And then assumes that, and then ignores all the other data points because he's fixated on.
It's taken in aggregate. No one thing, but all of it. One single explanation for all of it, and he wants to piecemeal it out and come up with one little thing, and boom, South Pole doesn't exist.
Gary's one of those guys that can draw an entire family of curves through a single data point somehow.
Yeah.
It's I watched him the other day, and he literally said about explaining that you cannot see shapes drawn on a piece of paper if you look at the edge of the damn piece of paper. No joke, Gary. We realize that, yes.
I don't know. I really think that Gary Wabanga deserves the Dumb Fellow of the Year award, although Bev is a very good nominee.
It just dawned on me how we can end the war in Ukraine. you can send Gary White Benga and Bev sit in a room with Putin, and they will both drive him to suicide.
Well, I think you're underestimating Putin's homicidal capacity. They're going before he's going.
Well, they'd have to put him on the 6th floor of a building and throw him out the window.
Yeah, but it's if we could turn stupidity into energy somehow, we'd have a very clean energy source from the flat earthers. It is just amazing to watch them in action.
Well, that's why Southern Hemisphere flat earthers are particularly interesting to me. I don't understand how you could be Mitchell from Australia or Failzoid or one of those living in the Southern Hemispheres, going out at night, watching the stars rotate the opposite direction on a point that doesn't include Polaris, and say,
hold on though, we do have Bev in the UK.
Well, I know, but in the Northern Hemisphere, you can come up with explanations that are plausible, if not, but they're totally wrong, but they're kind of okay. But that doesn't work in the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, they have explanations as to why the sun rises north of why the way, but in the Southern Hemisphere, like someone posted here not earlier, where the sun rises south of east and sets south of west. That's just not possible on the space pizza when the sun never goes below the Tropic of Capricorn.
What's worse than that? Go on, Tony.
No, go on, Rue, if I talk too much.
I know, it's Timbo Turtle here, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Timbo.
No, I was just going to say it's worse than that. It's that if you use the Tropic of Capricorn, the sun should never be further south than about 30 degrees. So it shouldn't even at all during any part of the year, about 30, 45 degrees. So it's not even just at this time of year.
Yeah, it's just worst at this time of year. It's just particularly egregious. But Paige was in here last week. She's Australian.
Paige, isn't it? Yeah, there's another one, Paige.
Yeah, and she just refuses to engage with the data. All she wants to talk about is water defining level.
Which water defining level is fine with me. The problem is that then they say level's horizontal, and that's incorrect.
Well, I'm not even sure that water responds to whatever physical influences it is subject to. So as long as the only physical influence it's subject to is gravity, yeah, you're fine. But even then, you do have if you're going to get really technical about it, you'd have tidal gradients that they're going to be too small to assess. But for instance, the ancient Egyptians, when they were building their temples, and they wanted to work out where the floor should be at, what they would do is they would fill up they would sort of block the entrances, pour in a bunch of water, and then put a layer of ink on the top. The ink being lighter than the water, it would float on the top and leave a mark on the inside of the structure. And that was where they would build their floor. And one of the features of that is that you can tell which way the wind was blowing when they did it. So yeah, water defines level. Sort of. I mean, it just responds to everything every force that is applied to it. It responds to it because that's the definition of a fluid. Repo Sandman says it's just not right to celebrate Christmas in the summer.
Does the Australian Santa Claus still wear the big red coat and stuff or not?
He does. Yeah. Sorry, go on, Timbo.
I was going to say he just wears shorts and goes to the beach.
Shorts and goes, but he still has a big red furry thing, which.
I thought the Santa in Australia had a 6-pack.
I'm not sure.
The last time I was in Australia, the Santa was a lot thinner than he is over here.
Yeah, he has a 6-pack of beer usually.
And flip flops.
Yeah, I think the tiff that's going on between Nathan Oakley and Bev has just been hilarious.
Who do you root for in this?
I don't know. How do you get both of them to lose?
Yeah, exactly. I
Well-
mean, I just hope it's like a 0-0 idiot tie or something.
So it's like watching a death match between syphilis and pancreatic cancer.
I mean,
Is that super chat from Godzilla? Is that legit? Like he's not going to super chat Nathan anymore? Because that's devastating for Nathan.
I don't know. Something Shaky posted.
Yeah,
Looks legit to me.
yeah. So I remember, like 6 months ago, it was just any super chat. 90% of them was like from Godzilla. He was keeping the show afloat.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's been quite loyal for some odd reason. Meanwhile, Bev's viewership has dropped off a little, or his channel membership's dropped off a little bit since Nathan told everybody to go unsub. That
How
was
about
funny.
Oakley? Who's watching Oakley's show?
No, not anymore.
Is it the same 12 people every time?
Yeah.
Yeah, not only the same 12, not only the same 12 people, it's the same stuff every single day, apart from when Bev came on.
Yeah,
broke
it's
the
just
monotonous, broke the monotony a little bit. Sorry, Blue, go ahead.
Yeah, he's down to debunking replays of stuff. It's pretty
You
pitiful.
can't actually get any live opponents.
No.
Who the hell wants to go on there and call a retard and a wanker and aces balls? It's the same thing over and over again.
Bev does.
Well,
Bev
this is yeah.
Bev's a masochist.
Bev's entire system of argumentation is basically irrelevant of what's said to him, and it's just to repeat certain phrases with a level of incredulity. That's all he does. But the level is horizontal, or pi is a constant. That's all he does over and over. So being yelled at, just he ignores it and just keeps on. That would be my guess. But this is what I've long been suggesting: is that if Globers stop going on to Nathan Oakley's show, it'll die, because that's all he's got is yelling at Globers.
That's right.
Using the mute button, yelling at Globers, and that's all his audience are there for. And if you can't do it, he'll starve. And the fact that he won't go out of his echo chamber, you can weaponize that against him. Well, you can live in you can starve to death inside your echo chamber, or you can come out and you can actually discuss on even ground.
Or he'll just start eating his own.
Yeah.
No, he won't. Even if he gets down to 1 or 2 viewers, he's not going to come out of his echo chamber. There'll still be the same people, and there'll be 1 or 2 people listening. And
Hey,
still,
shout out!
He won't come out.
Yeah, a little quick shout out to Indie Tiger's Sci-Fi Review. I think it says the photon as the carrier particle for comfort has been empirically disproven. I believe I would agree with that.
Yeah,
If that's what I think it is, those things aren't very comfortable.
Guys, align the character of some of the greatest minds in history: Quantum Eraser and Nathan Oakley. I just don't understand how you guys can malign him like this. They have brilliant minds.
Well,
If you're forgetting the smartest guy on earth, it's Whitsitt and his understanding of
Relativity.
Relativity. He got destroyed by Fight the Flat Earth the other day.
I heard him say that he won several times.
Well, he's wrong because he's wrong.
Well, again, this all comes down to the fact that Witsitt's argument was based on the concept that he understands relativity. He doesn't, and nor is he aware of the experimental evidence validating special and general relativity. So he's just speaking absolute nonsense when he says it's just a mathematical formulation. But hand in hand with that comes the concept that when you have it explained to you in a debate, you still don't understand it and you think you won. They don't understand enough to know that they lost.
Well, Whitsitt, the hubris that Whitsitt has is beyond belief. The fact that he tries to think he can understand Einstein just blows my mind. Oh my God, Einstein and Whitsitt do not belong in the same sentence.
Well, the really funny thing is that this really simple test, the easy to understand tests of relativity, when they took these atomic clocks, put them on airplane seats and flew them north and east and west around the world and come back, and they don't agree with the clock that's stayed on the ground, and the difference is pretty much exactly what they calculated.
That's because voltage is higher as you go up in elevation. Duh.
Well, no, it
Oh,
doesn't.
they've they did the same thing in Tokyo Tower. They sent an atomic clock up to the top of the tower and differed from the atomic clock down at the bottom. They did the same with a 30 centimeter separation between the atomic clocks, and it took an hour. Recently, in 2022, they were able to demonstrate gravitational time dilation over a vertical separation of 1 millimeter using
No way. Wow.
using super cold strontium clocks. And there are multiple groups around the world that are working on quantum entanglement experiments to demonstrate gravitational time dilation. It's
I don't know. Those can be fairly hard to, the difference in time is very small. But I mean, this is what back in the 70s was the original when they put the clock. So I mean, it's been, and then the other one is muons. These what is it? It's not solar. The cosmic rays.
Yeah.
They hit those muons shouldn't hit the surface of the Earth, yet they do because they only last like 2 milliseconds or something. But the fact is, they're traveling a huge fraction of the speed of light, and 2 milliseconds stretches them out long enough that they can hit the surface of the Earth.
Did they put an atomic clock in the orbit?
Yes. Each of the GPS satellites has an atomic clock on it.
Yeah, don't they
There
have
was
they have to adjust them?
Oh yeah, and there was a happy accident that happened several years ago when ESA was launching 2 of their Galileo satellites. Galileo is completely state of the art, and they have rubidium and cesium clocks on board. And during launch, I believe it was on an Ariane, I think it was a Russian launch. But either way, it went into a bad orbit. So they couldn't use these 2 brand new state-of-the-art satellites for navigation because they were in a highly elliptical orbit. But they were still fully functioning. So given the gross distance of this high ellipticity, they were able to track its timing from this highly exaggerated apogee and perigee. And they did that for like 3 years on these 2 wayward satellites and got very, very high concordance with the expectation of relativity and a much better, finer measurement. They were able to add like 2 digits behind the decimal.
Yeah.
Does anybody know, like with Ron Hatch, he's a credited engineer, or a credible engineer. He's worked on GPS and stuff like that. And I hear him brought up by like Grimm all the time. And I don't have the background really to be able to disprove or prove what he's saying. But he calls into contention relativity. Does anybody know what his argument is, and does it have any water? Hold any water?
No, I don't know what his argument is. It's difficult to imagine that it can hold any water. The amount of evidence in support of the accuracy of special relativity and general relativity is pretty overwhelming. So he'd be arguing against science.
Right.
All of the evidence we have. And, it's not just, I hear muons brought out as sort of a validation of special relativity, and they are. But we've now got particle accelerators We can examine the the resistance to acceleration of very fast particles, and they seem to increase in effective mass in accord with they never get faster than the speed of light. Their rate of decay slows down. So we've got an immense body of experimental evidence that is completely in accord with special relativity.
Right.
So
that's the other great example.
Quick shout out to M2M Matt for £5. Has an interesting question. He said, "Who found themselves in the odd position of agreeing with Oakley, calling Biv a liar and a wanker?" I think all of us did, Matt.
By the way, someone had to mention Gary Wybenga's name, and guess who popped into the Discord?
Yeah.
Who said it 3 times?
Well, that's the thing, though. That's my first question: is who do you root for in this battle? Because I agree with him that Bev's a wanker, but so are you, Gary.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It's not an exclusive thing. Just because he's a liar and a wanker doesn't mean that you aren't, mate.
That is a
At
fact.
least in the NFL or soccer, you can root for a tie. But
well, here we just got to
I
root
don't
for
know.
like mutually assured destruction, so they both kind of take each other out.
It's like trying to pick a winner between the Yankees and the Red Sox. I can't stay in both teams.
Yeah, but the thing is, whatever you might say about him, you might be a liar and a wanker as well. I mean, but you couldn't disagree with him when he was saying no. That's the odd thing about it.
It is very.
What's going through my mind here? It's like, what the hell's going on?
And he says it with such vitriol too. I
Yeah,
mean,
definitely.
the anger that comes out of that guy's got serious anger.
He does.
He's a trained actor. Keep that in mind.
I mean, I've heard you go off the rails, Tony, but not like Nathan Oakley.
Yeah.
But the thing about Nathan Oakley as well, I mean, I think it was Ranty, wasn't it? It said that when he was at the UK Flat Earth conference, he was very meek and very kept himself to himself, hardly said anything to anybody. And it complete contrast to what he is online. So he's obviously a very insecure person. So he uses this online persona as a kind of thing to hide his insecurity. I think he's quite severe insecurities, if you ask me.
I think a lot of guys on the internet, the blowhards, are like that in person.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
That's the problem with the internet. You have keyboard warriors. They would say something they never say to you to your face.
That's right. That's a fact. Nobody's gonna. None of them act that way in person. I guarantee you, they don't.
I don't know. I think that. Yeah. I think that. Oh God, the guy from Scotland. The big guy from Scotland. Dell. I think Dell. Yeah. I think Dell is probably that 24/7.
I can tell you, if Nathan Oakley came up to me and talked to me like that, my foot be so far up his ass, it wouldn't even be funny.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He wouldn't, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, they won't do that.
No.
I don't think Dell would do it. Honestly.
But I mean, you're right. You're right in what you're saying, Joe. I mean, like, and also, I think it was Tony that said it. But it's just a vast contrast between what's Oakley's actually like online and the way he goes on at people and his persona outside of when he's at that conference. I mean, entirely different when they're polar opposites. I mean, you get some people that wouldn't say things, perhaps they would say things online that they wouldn't say to somebody face to face, but that was just such a vast difference.
I don't know. I think I could also see QE being the person he is in reality too. He seems that kind of person.
Yeah, I know what you mean by QE. Yeah.
I reject that statement because I don't think the QE is a person.
What is he then?
He's a vaguely humanoid fungal infection.
That's why we love you, PhD.
I had to give up on him when he couldn't subtract a positive number from another positive number and not end up with a larger positive number. At that point, it didn't seem there didn't seem to be any reason to ever want to go any further with QE.
Yeah, he's he you know the he manages, however, to sort of be astonishingly deceitful, and a completely garbage human being to champion status even for flat Earth.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he is you can tell that he is he has scientific knowledge. Ranchi was showing sort of a discussion he had about doing a discussion they had about doing the double slit experiment with buckyballs. And that paper exists. It's been done a few times. But he refused to provide the citation, because had he provided the citation, it would have been obvious to everybody in the conversation that there is a thing called the de Broglie wavelength. Everything is a wave. Every object is a wave. But the wavelength of the wave is inversely proportional to the momentum of the object. So it's only for small objects that you can that wave-like behavior is at all observable. Whereas they were trying to argue that light must be a particle. And the fact that it shows wave-like behavior is completely irrelevant. That's just a happenstance. It must be a particle. That was their meaning. That was what they were trying to argue towards. But the fact is, the evidence that they showed is, well, everything has wave-like properties. So that means that light must be a wave. But he was aware of this experiment. He knew about this experiment, and he knew enough not to provide the reference. So it's complete deception. It's complete lies. He understands the science well enough to know that what he's saying is complete bullshit. But he's still saying it anyway.
Yeah, well, you're not going to stop him. He is the self-proclaimed grand poobah of.
He would. He cites stuff, and then, he omits the next 3 lines.
Well, he's actually
he does it all the time.
He's actually one of the easiest out there to debunk, because he's already done all the work. He gives you his citation, and invariably you can take his own citation and beat him over the head with it.
Yes. That's what I mean. That's what I mean about he knows. Like, he's read this stuff. He's read through it in enough detail. This is the bit that I want. And he must have read over the other bits and decided, well, I don't want those because they'll debunk me. But he basically does your debunking for him, because all of the science, all of the science disagrees with his position. So that if he's presenting something, he's just cherry picked it, and as Blue says, and as Bob the science guy demonstrated.
Right, Bob did that.
If you just go out and check the web pages, more or less 2 paragraphs later, they'll be directly contradicting him.
Yeah.
And,
sometimes it was in the next sentence even. I mean, it was ridiculous.
I did one of those too, and it's really easy.
He had he was saying that Boston College said this, and I looked it up. BC was British Columbia, but to him it was Boston College. But
close enough.
Boston College, British Columbia, all the same thing.
Oh, BC.
Yeah, BC.
Before
all North America, it's all the same thing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
BC, before AD, we had BC.
They're all prone to do the same thing, though. I mean, Bill is a great example. Time and time again, he will talk about and point to the Ordnance Survey when I can't think of a better source to debunk Bev's bullshit than the Ordnance Survey.
When are you going to invite Bev back on, Blue?
Huh?
When are you going to invite Bev back on? Hopefully never.
Over here?
No,
Hell,
over here.
hell no. He ain't coming back in here.
I like the way he's saying, hopefully never, Joe, but secretly you want him to come back. You really do. If anything else, to have a good laugh, I know.
No, I want what's the guy? Lindsay. From that's who I'd like to have on next. Lindsay.
Oh, Lindsay won't.
Yeah.
No way.
Oh, give me a break. Come on. Lindsay
break
is,
the inter-
Lindsay
he'll
is
break
virtually
Discord.
Lindsay is virtually undebunkable. You can't debunk him.
Like you see, he doesn't make any sense at all.
That's right. You can't figure out what he said in the first place. There is nothing, literally nothing there to debunk.
Most flat earthers don't understand them either.
Well, those whiteboards are just, man, they're just awesome.
Did you know he did a stint on Globebusters? I mean, some of you know he did a stint on Globebusters, and the reaction was interesting, and then that was it. Moving on.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny.
And it doesn't make any sense. It's just foolishness. He yammers on for 28 minutes and 13 seconds or whatever the timer is set on for his camera.
That's he has to do it that way because after that the guys in the white coats come in and they take away his phone and his whiteboard.
It's like, I like the way he says, "Oh, I'm the first person to come up with this theory." Yeah, first and the only.
No shit.
Yeah. Because he makes it up as he goes along.
Yeah, we figured that out too, buddy. Yeah.
It's almost the end of the year. It's the 29th, and since the January 1st of 2022, I declared that the 2022 would be the year that the flat earthers actually had to give proof that the Earth was flat. And all I've gotten, well, I was wrong. All I gotten in the entire year was the same thing I got in like the second day was A, it looks flat, and B, water. Other than that, I haven't gotten squat.
You're still not. You're not going to get it in 2023 either.
They can't.
No, I've given up. It's 2023 is going to be the year or something else.
They simply cannot give you what they don't have, and any proof is exactly what they don't have. They'll never be able to give it to you.
Yeah, I'll settle for evidence. Evidence of, if you want to be pedantic.
But you know what's really sad? I'll tell you, I'm just thinking about it. How much, add up how much time otherwise intelligent people have spent on Discord and YouTube talking about flat earthers. That's really sad.
At first, I was amused by these people. Now I'm just kind of disgusted by them. At first, I thought it was like an entry level belief, an entry level conspiracy, because it's so stupid. But then I come to find out that no, it's like the last thing you believe because it's so stupid.
It wraps up all the conspiracies in the one.
Right.
All the elements of all the other conspiracies wrapped up in the one grand conspiracy.
Right.
It's got the liars, this guy, that guy, they're trying to, it's Satan and it's the Jews, it's the Jesuits, blah, 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 blah. Everything's a lie. It's
You've been talking to Lemon.
Hey, I went to a Jesuits college, so I guess I'm part of they, but, it's really sad.
You've been talking to Lemon with the Jesuits.
They mention Jesuits all the time. I mean, I hear it all the time.
Yeah. The funny thing about the Jesuits is the Jesuits are in league with the Masons, and they don't understand that the Jesuits and the Masons don't like each other very much anyway.
Well, most of the several of the Jesuits I was friends with in college, they didn't even believe their own religion. So I don't know what's going on with some of these guys. But they're 40 and 45 years old, and it's like, what am I going to do? I spent all this time in the church, and what am I going to do? It's a whole nother story.
The biggest thing I found when I got into this is how quickly we just set aside the fact that we can see the Earth from space. because
You,
we bring
you
that up every time, the conversation just goes away. So
yeah, you
Well,
got
space is
gotta say
fake.
not gotta say not onto that one.
Space is fake. It has to be fake.
Yeah.
yeah,
The
so
fact,
we just everyone believes that.
the fact that there are 10 people in orbit now as we speak is also fake. They're on some sort of NASA / Chinese soundstage somewhere.
And the first picture of the curve of the Earth from space was in 1946. So
Right.
long
Taken by a
before
German,
CGI or anything.
right. Taken by a captured German V2 launched from Fort Bliss, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
About right. What are they going to do when we're back on the moon?
Well, that's fake too. There were some guys. There were some ham radio operators that took antennas and pointed them at the moon, and were hearing live the transmissions from the astronauts. But they only did it for Apollo 11, because then they figured out, hey, we're getting the same thing over the TV. Why are we wasting all this effort?
Well, these guys. I mean, I was 11 years old when Apollo 11 landed on the moon, and people realized what TV was like back in the day. You couldn't fake the moon landing with the technology that existed at the time. It's laughable. Now it's like these people think that we had HD TV and the internet and all this crap. In 1969, we had a black and white TV and like 6 channels.
Now, that was true of most people in those days, except we didn't have 6. We had 2 channels.
Oh, but I guess they were VHF. You didn't have any UHF down there.
No, he lived down in the Hollers, Tennessee. They barely had electricity. So.
Now, we had well, we actually had 3 stations, but our black and white television didn't receive UHF. It was
In the UK, at the time, we had 1 channel, the BBC. That was it.
Yeah,
black and white.
And you needed a license to view it.
Yep, still do.
Oh, God.
And regardless of whether or not a technology, could have been, used to fake it, there's just no reason to. Plus, it was like the most exposed project. I mean, there were journalists from around the world crawling all through Cape Canaveral, through the whole damn process. Anybody and their brother could tap into the radio signals. No, there was just no motive for faking. So they just left there with, just insults against a human accomplishment.
Well, I mean, the argument in terms of motive was that, and it seems to be the going theory now, as they all seem to have decided this is the case, is that they got to the point where they realised that it was going to be impossible to get to the moon. So they decided to fake it. But the theories as to how it was actually faked is as wide as flat Earth. Nobody can actually agree on one particular way how it was actually faked. That's the thing, or where it was all done and all the rest of it.
If they're going to fake it, they would have done it once.
Yeah.
And then what? They did Apollo 13 was faked for what? Street credibility?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. This is the thing, you see, because I mean, even it's a well-known thing as well, even particularly amongst Globers, that they don't actually realise. Some people don't realise they actually did it 6 times, not just once. And these are people that I know that don't believe the Earth is flat, and they go, "What? There was 6 times they did it? What?" And honestly, and that's the true with a lot of these conspiracy theories. It's just because they always say the moon landing, thinking that there's only one. So, they're going to have to fake it 6 times. And you've seen the last Apollo 15, 16, and 17, with the video footage. It's pretty much, well, it's not high definition, but it's really clear. And the photos were a lot better, and they just got better at it, television pictures and all that.
But if you just look at the orbital footage from Gemini, there's no way at that time that they could have faked it. They lacked the capacity. But this is one of the things that if obviously they will have considered the moon landings, they will have considered space, because that's the first evidence source that's going to be thrown in their face.
Right.
And so they are prepared for it, and they've got their magical thinking in place for it, which is why I sort of prefer to start attacking them from different directions, like the fact that we use gravity to map the ocean floor, or the fact that we use gravity to find subsurface mineral deposits or track surface water. The fact that seismic waves travel around the globe multiple times. They don't have explanations for these, and the more you can sort of broaden their horizons and just rather than beating them over the head with the details, because you will find, what I find is that you get these flat earthers coming on and they're hit with the same stuff that they've always been hit with. They've got their script, they've got their magical thinking in place, and they just shrug it off and return home thinking that they've done really well. You've got to hit them with evidence that they're unaware of. You've got to hit them with evidence. You've got to actually teach them if you want to sort of make progress. The more if we were better able to do that, if we were better able to say, look, there's a bunch of evidence out there that just disputes you. We've got gravimeters that are sensitive enough to pick up, tidal influences or indeed atmospheric changes. It's just the claim that gravity doesn't exist, isn't measured, hasn't been tested. That's all false.
Blue did it.
Yeah.
Blue replicated the Cavendish experiment.
Right. Yes, he did.
Oh, Tony, they're just going to say, don't confuse me with facts. My mind's already made up.
Well, the latest one that gets me is I think it was a Whitsitt or one of these morons said that they can prove that because the gravimeter, gravity when during a rainstorm, the gravity goes down because of the electric current. And no, it's because of the rain. The rain decreases the density of the soil underneath you. So
it's the you've actually got mass overhead that's falling out and getting closer. So if there's rainfall, you're actually you do have to take into account the mass of the stuff that is above you. And if there is more stuff above you, then your downward acceleration decreases. So it's a complicated issue looking at what happens. But the fact is that we can tell where mass is by looking at the gravimeter, and this was true, even 200 years ago. Jotvosh was able to map the floor. He had an iced over pond, and he went over it with a pendulum, measuring gravity, precisely measuring gravity with the pendulum, and he was able to map where gravity was high. He was able to map where he thought there would be more soil, or the soil would be closer to the surface, and where it was deeper. And when it defrosted, he had a good, he was able to demonstrate the accuracy of his map. So, we can use gravitational acceleration to work out where mass is distributed. If it's all electricity, if it's all relative density, buoyancy, relative density disequilibrium, or whatever the hell they say, that won't work. It isn't. It isn't plausible that that's going to work.
Isn't there a gravimeter in everybody's phone? Or am I getting confused with something else?
There are accelerometers in everybody's phone.
Accelerometers, right? Okay. Yep.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the damn stream back.
Have you lost it?
Yeah.
Has anyone come across a flirt with any reasonable explanations why down instead of like sideways or up? Or Or is
No.
it point?
It's just a law of nature.
There we go.
Yeah, everything is seeking its level.
Well, I have a rock here that I picked up from the top of a 14,000-foot mountain. Why isn't it seeking its level? And currently, I'm closer to sea level now. It should be, 14,000 feet above my head if it's seeking its level.
You had an argument
Restrained,
about.
it would.
I think you said that once before on one of the discourse. Did you,
Yeah.
NASA Shill?
Yeah.
I can't remember who. Recently, I can't remember who it was you were arguing.
I didn't get any great answers then either.
No, no.
Yeah, because it's being restrained. If it wasn't restrained, it would go.
Well, what do you mean it's being
Like
restrained?
if you build a bridge and you put a car on the bridge, the car isn't going to fall to the ground, right? It's not going to fall down. And
Why isn't it going back up, Gary? I took it
Why
from
would it go back
14,000.
up? It's heavier than the air.
But I took it from 14,000 foot. If it's all about returning to your level, like you say, if I take a rock from the bottom of the cliff and take it to the top of the cliff and drop it off, it's because it's returning to its own level. In this case, I took a rock from the top of the hill, I brought it down. Shouldn't it want to return to its own level?
Level if they're restrained.
It's not being
If you got
restrained.
a rock on a mountain, there's a lot of stuff holding it in place.
It's not being restrained in the upward direction. It's not being restrained in the upward direction.
It's heavier than the air, so it's not. It's just.
Well, wait a minute, hold on. Then why does the rock fall down if it doesn't?
Heaven is up, earth is beneath, just like it was created.
Oh,
It
you see,
can't fall down. It's already on the ground. It's being restrained. Dork.
No, it's not. You see, the problem is that you're returning to your own level only works in the direction we call down. Wonder why there's a downward bias, huh?
No.
Wow.
Well, what if I'm on the mountain and I let go of the helium balloon?
Helium balloons only work by gravity, and if you have it's because of buoyancy.
What you like to say. It doesn't need any gravity whatsoever.
Yeah, it does.
It's just
Buoyancy.
and density. It's going to go up.
Well, wait, hold on. Again, my rock here should be. My rock here should be 14,000 feet above my head. Then, if it wants to return to it.
This is exactly the problem. This is exactly the problem that I was pointing out. Don't talk to him about whether or not rocks fall or should go back to their own level. Don't try and we use gravimeters to map mass that we can't see, that is not directly next to the gravimeter. So it cannot.
Explain how that works. Explain how you use gravity to measure the depths of the ocean. I don't know how you do it. Just explain it. I'll listen.
All right. So we use sea surface height. Because sea surface height, the sea surface is actually not all the same elevation. There are portions where sea surface is higher than normal, and there are portions where it is lower than normal. And what you can do is you can map the sea surface height, and this gives you a sea surface map. Now because gravity works, that if there's a large underwater mountain, that mountain is heavier than the equivalent volume of water. So it exerts a stronger gravitational attraction. So you actually get water piling up over the mountains. Similarly, over valleys, there's less mass there, so you get a lower water surface. You can also fly gravimeters in planes over the ocean, and you can measure the variation in gravity due to whether or not there are huge subsurface mountains or there are huge subsurface valleys. So you can use all of this data that you've got. You can also use satellite gravimeters as well. But you've got all of this gravity data that tells you about the mass distribution over the oceans. And you can use it to work out where there are rises, where there are plains, where there are abyssal valleys, whatever, or deeps. And you can. It's not fantastically accurate, and if you look at Google Earth, you'll often see what look like little snail trails going across the ocean floor. And what you're seeing there is actually sonar depth sounding. So that's where a ship has gone across and it's actually measuring the depth. And so you've got these two sources of data. You've got the gravity data, and then you've got the ocean, and then you've got the sonar data. And you can meld them together. You can combine the two data sets. And if the sonar data contradicted the gravity data, we would know that our theory of gravity was wrong. If our gravity data said, well, there's a big mountain there, and we sent a sonar vessel, and it said, well, no, there isn't a big mountain there, you're just wrong, you're making it up, then we would know that there was something wrong with our understanding of gravity. But that doesn't happen. We can independently verify that the results we get from gravity are pretty good.
You said they're not super accurate, right?
They're not, they don't have super high, they don't, yeah, they're pretty good. So if you look at, you know, I'm not sure if Blue can bring up a Google Earth image of the oceans, but if you look at Google Earth, you'll see that on a large scale it looks pretty good. As you focus in more and more, you lose resolution. You know, it isn't super accurate in terms of fine detail. The sonar is a better tool, but it does work.
Yeah, when I copy
Gravity push or pull.
Google
Sorry,
Earth's
what did
Google Earth's acting up for me a little bit right now, Tony.
Okay. All right, no problem. But you know, the
Gravity push or pull.
So what?
does gravity push?
Does gravity push or pull?
It's
Does it do both?
no, it doesn't push. Yeah, it pulls.
Well, you say gravity causes the helium balloon to go up.
Yes, and
push?
what? No, that's pulling the air down below the balloon, and as the air comes down, it pushes the balloon up.
So how does gravity pull the air down? Does it force now again?
Well, this is why I didn't like your question in the first place, because it's a misrepresentation.
No, I'm serious. Does it pull? Is gravity a force now again that pulls the air?
No, great. So okay, Gary, if you're going to ask a question, please stop talking after you've asked it. Okay.
No, I'm being quiet.
Okay. So.
But I want you to answer that. If gravity is a force, and does it pull the air? I just need a simple answer.
Okay. The simple answer is that it doesn't matter one way or the other if gravity is a force.
Gravity can't really do anything, right?
That is not at all what I said.
Well, how does it do anything if it's not a force?
Because
how does it do anything if it's not a force? Anything.
So the effects of gravity are due to the difference between the way objects behave under gravity and the way other objects behave when they are receiving offset acceleration.
How does gravity affect how they behave?
Can you let me? Stop. Can you let me finish
I have to. Otherwise, you're going to keep going, and I'm going to miss a point.
Okay.
How does gravity affect any of that? It doesn't. It's nothing.
Gravity affects. Okay, gravity. Okay, I'm going to keep this relatively short, and then you can ask a question at the end. Gravity defines the geodesic through space-time that all objects want to follow unless they are acted upon by another force. Do you understand that?
Gravity define that.
It
doesn't do anything. It's not a force, so it can't define anything or do anything.
That is you're making philosophical arguments there. All you're saying,
I'm making just an average
all you are saying is philosophical arguments. The nature of reality.
That's what you're doing.
The nature of reality as we observe it, and we can. The difference is that we can confirm our understanding with observations and experiment.
observe gravity being a force?
Again, whether or not gravity is a force is ultimately irrelevant. It is
It
at
can't be
it is
irrelevant because it's pretty much the dominant thing in your whole globe model.
it's what
You can't have
defines
planets without gravity because you have to have mass to attract mass. You got to have all kinds of things. You can't have any of your globe model without
No,
it being
just
a
the one
force.
thing you just said. That's all you got to have. Mass attracts mass, Gary.
Well, how does it do that if it's not
That's
a force?
it.
How does it?
It
How does
doesn't
it
make any
attract
difference how
mass?
it does that.
How does it do it, Blue?
It does. It
So-
doesn't make any difference how it does it, Gary.
Gary, you
Well,
need
no, because you're just
Gary-
making something up because you need it to fit your model, but it doesn't work.
No, we're not making stuff up. We
So
are.
how does mass?
I'm just going to
Can
mute
you
him.
let me speak?
Yeah, go ahead. He's muted. You can't shut up, Gary, and let
Gary,
Tony talk.
Gravity, what you are observing with motion under gravity, if you let something drop, that stuff is following its geodesic. Did Gary just leave? I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Well, he's not going to sit here and continue to talk over the top of you and me. That's not going to happen.
So when you drop something, it is following its geodesic through space-time. Why aren't you following your geodesics through space-time? Because you're standing on something, and that is exerting a force on you, so you don't follow it. So there is a difference in the force that you're experiencing and that the falling body is experiencing. Now you can model that in one of two ways. You can say, I'm experiencing the force and the falling thing isn't, or you can say the falling thing is experiencing the force. Now, the magic of physics is that you'll get the same answer both ways. So it doesn't matter if you're the subject of the upward acting force or the falling object is the subject of the downward acting force. They're mathematically and physically identical concepts. And this is the point that Einstein was making. Einstein is making the point that gravity acts the same as a constantly accelerating reference frame. They're the same thing from the point of view of somebody who's inside them. You don't get around this by saying, well, gravity can't make stuff happen. Gravity does make stuff happen. The stuff it makes happen is that everything follows its geodesic through space-time, through the principle of least action. And you can deny that. You can claim that there must be some superior cause for that. And maybe you're right. We are not currently at that level of understanding of why space-time curvature exists or how it came to be, or but that is metaphysics. Maybe God made it like that. Maybe God does exist and he made it like that. We don't know. And you would think for somebody who wants to prove that God exists, that would be a way to go. Okay, gravity exists because God made it that way. Fine. But we don't care about the why. All we care about is what it does. We can describe what it does, and we don't care about why it does it. That's not a scientific question.
PhD Tony, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
All right. One thing that kind of confuses me about relativity, and I'm by no means an expert in it, but do you really discuss forces in relativity? Or do you discuss following geodesics and forces, or something you discuss in Newtonian mechanics?
So you do discuss forces in general relativity, but ultimately the distinction between a force and gravity is kind of metaphysical. So every object in its own reference frame experiences no acceleration. Right. If you were in the reference frame of a tennis ball, everything else would be moving. the tennis ball isn't seeing itself accelerate, except with respect to everything else. So every object in the universe is experiencing zero acceleration in its own reference frame. And what Einstein says is that that's what all objects experience, but only free-falling objects are right.
Well, if I'm sitting out there and I start falling into the gravity, I'm in orbit, I slow down and I start falling into the gravity well of Earth. Is there, in relativity, is that a force acting on me, or am I just following the geodesic down the well?
You're just following the geodesic down the well.
Okay. So the point that I'm making is, if you discuss forces, as far as gravity being a force, would you say that it would be better to discuss, when you use the word force, to limit yourself to Newtonian mechanics, or is that more appropriate, or is that confusing?
It's a kind of confusing issue. So the fact is that when we see something accelerate, it's always an apparent acceleration. It's accelerating relative to us, relative to our reference frame. But that could be an artifact of our reference frame. So it's very difficult to extract reference frame effects from actual forces like electromagnetic force and Newtonian force. Now, if you're in a Newtonian force and you look at Newton's first law of motion, which says that a body will remain at rest and unless it's or move in a straight line unless it's acted on by a force, that assumes that there is a special reference frame where the concepts at rest and straight line are meaningful. And Einstein's point of view is, well, actually, that isn't true. The laws of physics need to work in every reference frame all at the same time. But
if I'm dealing with a bullet on Earth, can I just simply describe that? If I'm looking at the flight path of a bullet on Earth, can I just simply look at that in a Newtonian reference frame? Do I need to use relativity?
No, you don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Newtonian reference frame will be brilliantly accurate. And this is the thing: if you don't believe in space, then really you don't have that much use for relativity or relativistic effects.
Well, absolutely. So unless we're dealing with relativistic speeds or masses, I can discuss the universe in terms of Newton with enough accuracy to have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah, and that's the difference between your line of questioning and Gary's line of questioning, because science is only concerned with accurately modeling reality.
Yeah. Well, Tony, I'm a lot smarter than Gary is. That makes it a little easier.
It does make it a little easier, but Gary is fixated. But I think that there's a qualitative element here. Gary is fixated on why, what's making that happen.
I don't
science,
care.
And science doesn't really matter.
Well, I don't really care why gravity occurs. I just want to be able to describe it. Someday we may know why gravity has occurred, but it doesn't. Here's the biggest problem I think Gary and the rest of the science deniers have. We don't need to be able to give a specific mechanism of gravity. It doesn't require our permission to work.
Yeah.
It works whether we know about it or not, whether we know it even exists or not. It still works. The Earth was a sphere long before Neanderthals arose from the slime,
Yes.
It still was. And it was a long time before we realized the Earth was a sphere, but it was still a sphere then too. There was no time it suddenly went from being a cube to a sphere.
Yes.
We just need a better understanding of it.
Exactly. And this is one of the arguments that along with this argument, one of the things that helped us work out what was going on, and to work out, for instance, that moons were orbiting Jupiter and Saturn, the Galilean satellites, was the fact that we had better observation techniques. We could see stuff that earlier observers couldn't see. And so we were able to refine our understanding and improve our understanding and develop better models of what was going on. And one of the maxims of science is ultimately all models are wrong. But some models are useful. Some models are accurate. And it is those useful and accurate models that science is about. Refining our understanding, increasing the accuracy with which we can model these effects. And we understand that a model is not reality. A model is distinct from reality, but it allows us to perform various actions, develop various technologies, undertake various projects, if we have a very precise understanding of how stuff works.
Well, the way I describe it is when you build a room, you want the room to be square. Now,
yes.
For $1,000, I can get you a room that's square to within a 1/16 of an inch. For $100,000, I can get you a room that's machine squared to within a micron. Is it necessary for you to go to that extra effort and expense to get that extra precision? Yep. And there are times that it is, and there are times that it most definitely isn't. We live in a slide rule world. 3 significant digits is good for most things.
Exactly. And I mean, the detail to which you need to understand gravity depends on what you're trying to do. For the vast majority of history, the fact that things fall downwards at about 9.8 meters per second squared, that's all that people really needed to understand in order to build a structure that would stay up. That's pretty much all you need. In order to model a low altitude, a low Earth orbit satellite trajectory, Newton's laws of motion, Newton's law of gravity is all you need.
And a slide rule.
Yeah.
A slide rule. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're using if you're trying to model the finer detail of Mercury's orbit over many decades, you need relativity. If you want to model the rotational characteristics of different galaxies, you need something else that we haven't exactly worked out yet. But our understanding and our models become more sophisticated, and they improve, and our ability to explain reality is now much more extensive than it used to be.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Gary continue on with his silly line of questioning, but I think that if he wants to start talking about relativity, he's going to have to justify why you need to make relativistic requests or corrections in whatever silly question he has. Tell me he'll have to justify why he has to go to general relativity. If not, he can stay with Newton.
Yeah, that's a very good point. By design, general relativity accords exactly with Newtonian gravity on the surface of Earth.
Well, I just took all the fun out of Gary, it looks like, so we'll see what he does.
He might have gone off.
Oh, he's still here. Hey, Dr. Bob.
Hey, guys, I'm going to shut up now. I do want to talk to you about pi later on, Blue.
Oh.
And I've got some math for you to look at.
Raspberry Pi?
Well,
Apple pie, cherry pie. What kind of pie, Dr. Bob?
Well, that's exactly it. Apparently, Blue came out and caused an uproar the other day on different types of pie, and I mentioned that there was cherry, apple, and pumpkin, and they didn't do it. And then it has something to do with hyperbolic geometry. But I don't know. I looked at an article that was kind of interesting that said pi might be variable, and I was wondering if he could explain it to me.
Actually, Tony can do a better job than I can.
I've taken Tony's time.
Well, it depends. All of the ratio of the circumference of a circle to the radius of a circle depends on, obviously the curvature of the space-time and how you're measuring the circumference and the radius, where you're measuring it, the exact metric that goes into those distance calculations. Are you using, for instance, in the discussion that Blue's talking about with spherical pi, you are using, fairly standard Cartesian distance calculations. It gets more complicated if you've got a more complicated geometry. If, for instance, you're in relativistic terms calculating your distance using the C delta T term, then you need to include that in your calculation. Clive Wells was in the chat earlier, and he was saying that apparently there are some closed loops in general relativity that don't actually yield an angular measure of 2 pi. And I quizzed him on it a little bit, but he was unable to provide any more detail to me. Because I think that might have
Okay, so basically it just has to do with something that's well above the pay grade of somebody that's got, basic college math.
Yeah. It's when you're talking about hyperbolic geometries, you're well into the realm of sort of near graduate level mathematics.
Yeah. I'm lucky I even know what that is. I'm familiar with spherical and Euclidean Euclidean planar geometry and spherical geometry. I understand what hyperbolic geometry somewhat talks about, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
And it's that little picture I've got up on the YouTube screen right now that helps display it graphically. But
yes,
essentially, I mean, when you start talking about drawing a circle on the surface of a spherical object, something non-Euclidean, the radius is no longer that planar distance that we're familiar with, that pi, as we know it, works for. When you look at the radius as a portion of a great circle, right? That ratio, that pi ratio is constantly changing. And if you're all the way down at the equator, the biggest circle you could draw from a single point, center point, pi at that point would have a value of 2 if you're doing this in spherical geometry. Whereas if you made it a tiny little circle, infinitely small on the surface of a sphere, then you're back to Euclidean. It's the limit there is the familiar ratio that we know, 3.14159. So nothing more to it than that. And I didn't mean to throw the whole community into an uproar over it. It's just interesting.
Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. And, my kid was trying to explain it to me that way the other day, but he was just struggling. Kyle was struggling with it a little bit. So I thought I'd ask the boss.
Yeah, that's all it's about.
Yeah, that's all it is. Okay, I got you.
Doesn't have really any practical use that I'm aware of, frankly. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It certainly does.
Yeah, okay. So I just, one of the big things I always try and do is avoid the rumpus trap, where you try and get too precise with things with these people.
Yeah.
It just confuses them, and then they think they've got something.
Yeah.
Yeah, my point was to...
And that managed to confuse me, so it was a pretty good one.
Yeah, my simple point to the Bavarians over there was that I didn't make this shit up. This is what I just showed you comes from the University of Illinois, actually. You can find reference to it all over the place.
Oh yeah, I wanted to congratulate Bev on his DFOY. It's a distinct honor, and I just credit where credit's due, man.
Yep. I think he makes an excellent dumb fellow of the year, personally.
Oh, I absolutely agree. He's the king of dumb fellows, I think, and it's a well earned honor. He spent a lot of time reading books he doesn't understand to get that.
Yep.
I'm going to be nominating 10th Man next year with his groundbreaking work on celestial navigation.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
I wish he would have just sent me the money he spent on all the damn books he bought that he doesn't understand.
Well, I told him I'd tutor him. In exchange for a donation to the Dome, man.
Yeah. They are never going to get it. They absolutely can't understand how that works. And I don't think we can teach them.
Well, I think that I have a better chance of teaching Otis the cat calculus than I do Bev understanding why you can actually have an angle to a curve.
Yeah.
I think Otis had explained the calculus to him. Meow, 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 meow. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's the, it sort of seems trivial if you break it down, but in limit, in the infinitesimal limit, all differentiable curves are straight lines.
Yeah.
And every point's got a tangent on a curve.
Yes.
As your limit goes to zero.
Livewells is in the chat showing off.
Huh?
Livewells is in the chat showing off, talking about C-metrics and cosmic string struts.
Oh, good.
Ooh, cool stuff, man. I like talking to people smarter than me.
Yeah, I normally don't have to go very far to find people smarter than me. That is a fact.
Me too, Blue. My wife was just in the room.
Well, the key to it is you always do, oh yeah, sure. You want to see that specialist? Not a problem. Here's all the stuff I've got for you. Let me give him a call. He'll see you on Thursday. Then you go on over there and he looks at all the stuff I did and he says, Jesus, what am I going to do that he hasn't already done? Well, I got to find something. So here's this. And they come back thinking I'm smart and I did I did the right thing by sending him, but they come back thinking I'm a pretty bright guy too.
Nice.
Well, Dr. Bob, you definitely are smarter than the average Flurf. I'll give you that.
Huh. Yeah, damning with faint praise.
Missy the cat is smarter than the average Flurf, and she's the dumber of my two cats.
Yeah, I heard Ernest is pretty good with calculus, Dr. Bob.
I've had cases of tinea that are smarter than the average flat Earth.
How you doing there, Gary? You still out there, my man? Come tell us, give us some more of your wisdom.
You guys chased Gary the hell out of here. Well done.
Yeah, I think I made him mad when I muted him.
But, well, he just wouldn't shut up long enough to get an answer.
That's right. That's
Flurf 101. Ask a question, then talk through the answer.
That's standard for Gary. That's what he always does. I've let him get away with it in the past far too long.
At least he doesn't speak. At least he doesn't speak as fast as Whitsitt.
Yeah.
Well, the key to asking questions is shutting up and listening to the answers, and then you find better questions to ask next time. Now, Whitsitt agreed to debate with me on Modern Day Debate, and I'm trying to get it set up. And then he tried to hedge on it and say, "Well, I'll take a poll of my members and see if they want me to debate you." After he already agreed to it, so he can either do it or we'll just call him out for the coward that he is.
I sent an email to Modern Day Debates asking to debate Whitsitt, and he said, "Well, it'd be easier to organise if you've got a partner." I gone, okay.
He wants a 2-on-2.
Yeah, he wants a 2-on-2. So I said, okay, I'll team up with Professor Phil Bell. We'll both be happy to debate him. Haven't heard back, and I've sent a few prompts, but sort of it was supposed to have been organised and held by this stage after the first email. He said should be able to organise it within a month. Well, it's been a month. I haven't heard back from you.
I'd pay to hear that. I'd pay to
I
hear
think
that.
Whitsitt will agree to a debate for his buddies and then not follow through is what I think he's going to do, because I think he's afraid to face anybody that can actually, deal with his bullshit.
Okay, I do want to call out Clive Wells, who apparently proved a uniqueness theorem. Yeah, so it's a proved the uniqueness theorem for black holes in the C matrix / Ernst solution. There you go. That's an achievement.
Well, I've got some math I want to show Blue that from a guy in the flat Earth that apparently has scientifically proven that the conservation of momentum is not correct. Momentum isn't conserved.
Uh-huh.
That'll be an interesting trick.
Yeah, he's got 5 pages worth of equations. I thought you and I could go through them together.
I'm not sure why Repo Sandman thinks I'm fighting with Clive. I was just recognizing his accomplishment. It's very, very important. I mean, to some extent, if you have, for instance, 2 steel balls that hit, you are going to lose energy to sound, temperature, mechanical vibration of the balls, etc. So you are going to, the momentum of the 2 bodies, 2 macroscopic bodies, isn't going to add up to exactly the momentum going in, because there's some energy loss in the process. But I mean, that's fairly minor. That's not a
well, I don't think that's the level that he's at. I think that he's on a little bit more of a high school physics experiment level. And apparently he's managed to disprove the law of conservation of momentum.
Yeah. Well,
surprisingly, though, the physics professors disagree with him and don't want to talk to him about it. So I thought I'd give it a shot.
I guess he'll be in line for a Nobel Prize then, Dr. Bob.
Well, actually, it's his theory. I'm just kind of acting as peer review for it to look at it. So it's his theory. He gets the Nobel Prize. I hope I at least get some tickets to the ceremony.
Yeah, you can visit our good buddy out in Norway.
Oh, the Viking. Yeah.
That's right.
The rowing Norwegian monk.
Clive Wells tells us that conservation of momentum results from Noether's theorem. I'm not exactly sure how to... Noether? Emily Noether. Unsung hero of relativity calculations, true mathematical genius of the late 19th and early 20th century. And the time translational invariance of space. She... which the universe doesn't actually necessarily obey, apparently. Noether's theorem kind of holds.
I don't know. He sounds like a slacker to me, PhD Tony, compared to Whitsitt.
Yeah. Well, certainly in what passes for Whitsitt's mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, at least Whitsitt apparently doesn't live in his mom's basement. So apparently married, from what I can tell.
The problem you run into with a lot of these flat earthers is some of them actually can think. I don't think that Nathan Oakley or Whitsitt are particularly stupid people.
No.
But they can't connect dots,
Well, they willfully prevent themselves from doing it. It's magical thinking.
Yeah, 10th Man did a whole presentation on how the shortest distance across the surface of the Earth was a great circle, but didn't make the connection that means the Earth is a sphere. You know, he just can't make that connection. He thinks that's a straight line on a plane somehow.
The prison of belief.
Yeah. You know, and I was religious for 30 years or so, and there's a trick to sort of maintaining the cognitive dissonance of just not looking at that belief system too impassionately or rationally. And so, you know, if you train yourself just as soon as you start wandering in that direction to sort of, you know, turn away and not examine those beliefs in detail or with an objective perspective. So I can understand how they're doing it, the way that they're maintaining their belief even in the face of evidence.
Well, the thing that I do is I like to make their heads explode. I say, I tell them, if God is all powerful, could he not have created all life through a process of evolution? Could he have not just chosen to do it that way?
Yes.
You know, for convenience. The other thing is, if God was all powerful, how could man hide his existence by denying the shape of the earth? I mean, what does he care what man tries to do? If he wants to make his existence known, why couldn't he just make his existence known? Why do we have to, how can it be hidden by man?
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, I had all that religious stuff beaten out of me by the good sisters of St. Joseph.
Okay.
So when I was a kid, so
nuns will fix you up good.
Yeah, they sure can, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, it's a sorry, I'm just looking at some of the interactions that are going on in the chat, and managed to distract myself. But
You sure you're not watching cricket there, Tony?
The cricket finished yesterday. I explained this to you earlier. Like,
I know, that's why I jumped in. I wanted to get some cricket, some good cricket talk going tonight.
I think we've talked about cricket enough for one day, surely.
Is it at the Melbourne Cricket Ground match yesterday?
Yes. Yep, the MCG.
Yeah, I was there. What a great stadium that thing is. Holy mackerel. Wow.
It is. It holds 90,000 to 190 plus thousand.
It's the biggest. It's the biggest sports stadium I've ever been in.
Right.
It's just unbelievably big.
It is pretty huge.
Yep. Over there by the the Australian Open tennis facility.
Yeah. So,
cool.
You know, there's a time. I'm not sure why you're the only. Kitsune Cavalier is talking about the Sydney to Hobart race, which is a yacht race that starts on Boxing Day. So it starts the day after Christmas, and they race from Sydney down the east coast to Hobart. Why am I the only one who cares about that? I can't answer that. You know, I consider, you know, you can get a lot of the feel of yachting by standing in a shower and tearing up money.
Yeah, flying airplanes is real similar.
Or owning horses.
Yeah.
Well, the best way to simulate aviation is try and hold your bladder and tear up money.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Well, people are trying to kill you.
Yeah, airplanes and boats are fairly similar.
Yes, well, I was quite interested to see, you know, that we were discussing the yaw, pitch, and roll satellites. You know, terms that obviously descend ultimately from sailing.
Yeah.
You know, through aircraft, and now persist in discussions of satellite orientations.
Yep.
Well, someone's just back in the room, so look out.
Lay some wisdom on us, Gary. Come on, man, you can do it. Ask us the mechanism of gravity again. Why does space-time do what it does? Tell us it's all made up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he. It seems to be in a bit of a mood.
Yeah, just
Now,
remember, luminiferous ether was just a theory, too. You know.
yes, and it is amazing to me that people will read scientific discussions of the ether, and you know there are a lot of eminent scientists who opine that there must be an ether of some sort, but it must be very different in nature from what was proposed for the luminiferous ether, if it exists in any sense whatsoever.
Maybe it's the quantum field.
Well,
I always just say that there's going to be something better than relativity coming out someday. Something that's been more defined, but and maybe someday we will discover the origin of gravity. In the meantime, it really doesn't matter. We have gravity, and we got two ways to describe it: Einstein and Newton.
Yes, and
all that's needed.
Yes, you know, and if you don't believe in space, you really only need Newtonian gravity. Or you know, there's what's called Newton-Cartan theory, which is basically the same geometry as Einstein proposed. So there is space-time curvature, but it's entirely Newtonian. There's no sort of really esoteric relativistic effects, and that will describe everything on Earth. Everything on Earth will be well described by Newton-Cartan theory. So you can get, for instance, gravitational time dilation, which we observe. You know, you can get all of the artifacts of relativity that you can detect on Earth.
These are guys that are struggling with figuring out how a straw works. You know, I asked them, is the apple juice pushed up the straw or is it pulled up the straw? And they can't give me a correct answer. And then if I ask them, okay, well, how high can we pull up apple juice in a straw with a perfect vacuum?
Hello, everyone. I am Neil. I'm coming in behalf of Gary Waybenga. I have a voice and space is fake. Boom. Shout out to everyone.
Hello, Jose.
Well, that pretty much
Jose is not here. Jose is not here. He's in the chat. I'm Flip Flop.
Oh, okay, Flip.
That pretty much sums it up. I guess we all ought to give up. And okay, tell us a wondrous one.
Yeah, I want to shout out to Diver, Dan Navy, Vet. He say I'm a flat earther, but whatever I am, flat earther or globe earther, I'm an earther and I have a voice, and that's very important. I'm not mute. Unless you have a voice, Diver, I challenge you to join the conversation, at least to listen. Let's see your name in the Discord server. You see, everybody can join Blue's Discord server. He is welcoming you, and you can also have a voice. Thank you very much. Hit that like button. Almost 100 likes. Support content creators, support Big Blue doing a live show. 88, almost there. I'll go on mute now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose.
Let's have a debate
Flip-flop.
between. Let's have a debate between
sorry.
Flip Flop. Let's have a debate between Flip Flop and Flatty.
Oh, I thought you were going to say PhD Tony. I was getting excited here.
Well, we can do that too.
Yeah.
No.
Oh no! All right, winning by decision. Me.
It'll be good practice for you,
Thank
Tony,
you very
for
much.
Witsit.
I would say, flip-flop, given that they seem to be transitively identified, and I don't get along.
I don't understand why. I really don't understand why, PhD Tony, because we had an argument. Yeah, we had a disagreement, but you cannot hold grudges because I disagree with you and you disagree with me. That's the whole idea. We are in the neighborhood here. We're neighbors, man. Come on.
Well, the point where it got beyond a joke was when you started to deliberately try and upset me, and I found that to be more than slightly annoying and insulting. If yes, we can have an argument. Yes, we can have a disagreement. Actually, that argument had a big impact on me. People were throwing around all sorts of accusations about me being drunk during that argument, and and it sort of ruined my relationship with a particular channel. So whilst it was clearly sort of a trivial element for you, and you sought to make fun of it by riling me up, it actually had a significant impact on me, and I don't find it amusing. So, I don't wish you ill, but I'm not really as enamored of you as the rest of the community is.
And I want to say, if that's the way that you perceived the interaction, the way that it went, if you think that's the way it went, I mean, everybody have a appreciation and an interpretation of the facts, the way they happen. What I did is what I have always done for over 4 or 5 years, probably, with lots of people, including probably 90% of the people here. If that's the way you took it, if that affected you directly, I don't know why, but I guess I apologize with you, even though I didn't do anything wrong. That's kind of a you thing, but hey, you keep doing you, I keep doing me, man. I'll try not to piss you off. Shout out to Nimrod. He loves me too. Boom.
The old non-apology apology there.
Yeah. Yeah,
what
you
I
know it.
heard.
How about flip-flop? Yeah, flip-flop in action.
That's what I
Flip
heard.
flop, that was a little bit disingenuous. You obviously bothered him a great deal. You should really be a little more sincere to him, I would think.
Oh no, I should have been more grounded. I didn't do anything to him. He did it to himself. I mean, that's a fact.
Okay, guys, we're not going to get into that.
No,
Yeah.
I don't want to. I wanted to take it
that's-
easier, but Bob wanted to add a little fire now, wood to the fire. Oh well, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't want to go there.
I'll leave it there. I just wanted to encourage people to get blue to 100 likes.
Yeah, no point. We've had a pleasant
For one
evening.
thing,
Let's finish it up that way, and we're going to finish it up too pretty quickly because I have had nothing to eat since breakfast, so I'm getting a little hungry.
For
And
once, I agree with PhD Tony.
and I think at this point I'm going to say goodnight to the YouTube crowd. Thanks for everybody for showing up. It was just kind of a spur of the moment thing on my part. But we still had a hell of a good crowd, 120 at one point, I think. So, anybody got any final thoughts before I shut this YouTube thing down? You guys are all welcome to stay in here, obviously, and talk all you want to, but we can go down the list.
I do want to say something. So, before today, I'd never heard of the concept of spherical pi. Had never considered it or that it was variable. But I heard it, I listened to it, and I learnt something. And I kind of think that if more flat earthers were willing to do that, they'd be making progress. Just because you hear something that you've never heard before, you shouldn't make up your mind before you've considered it, and really thought it through dispassionately and see if it makes sense, and if it does, which it does in this case. So just keep an open mind and be willing to learn. I learned something today, and that's why I like hanging around with Blue and the other guys here.
I'll second that.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Thanks, Bob. Anybody else got anything? Well, alrighty. With that, I will say good evening to YouTube crowd. If we don't talk again or whatever, be very safe on New Year's Eve. All the best to everybody, and we'll be back next year for sure.
Yeah, happy New Year to everyone, and best wishes. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, see you guys.